We turn now to those racist and inappropriate emails reported by the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal regarding former Las Vegas Raiders coach Jon Gruden. Over a 7-year period ending in 2018, Gruden, who was one of the highest paid coaches in the league, used misogynistic and homophobic language in numerous emails sent to Bruce Allen, the Washington football team's former president, and several others. The now disgraced coach used anti-gay slurs referring to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell and used offensive language to describe some owners, coaches, media members who cover the league, and even some of the players, including former defensive end Michael Sam, a gay player drafted in 2014. Gruden also used a racist remark to refer to NFL Players Association Executive Director DeMaurice Smith, who tweeted a response calling for a renewed fight against racism, racist tropes, and intolerance. Former NFL wide receiver Keyshawn Johnson and ABC News contributor LZ Granderson join us now to talk about this gross misconduct. LZ, let's start with you. Gruden also denounced the emergence of women as referees in his emails. All of his offensive and degrading language here is simply unacceptable. It's unacceptable for anyone, actually, to speak like this. But as an NFL coach, you're expected to be a leader and a role model on and off the field. So is this so-called locker room talk ever going to end? And what are the lessons learned here for any coach?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I think it's important that we pull back and not talk about what transpired through the lens of sports and sports teams. And this is why. This isn't about locker room talk. This is about a leader in his industry having conversations with people with hiring and firing power, discussing whether or not the NFL should hire women, hire gay people, and how exactly should they treat black leadership. That's what transpired. Everyone knows the NFL is the most popular sport league in the country, but it's also one of the most powerful enterprises and businesses in the country. And as such, we should be looking at this not as a sports conversation solely, but as one dealing with corporate America. And here you have someone with a great deal of influence saying gay men should not be hired, saying women should not be hired for these jobs, and then again mocking a black man in leadership. That's how this conversation should be handled, because that's exactly what happened.
And Keyshawn, you and Jon Gruden was your coach on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, winning the 2002 Super Bowl together. You got that ring together. Gruden issued an apology saying he, quote, never meant to hurt anyone. You've been vocal in the past about Gruden, calling him a, quote, bad person. And today, we've got this clip. You reacted to his resignation as well. So we're going to listen into that. Hear what you had to say earlier.
I didn't know that Jon would say things like that and put them in an email. He just always been a fraud to me. He just always been a fraud to me. Never from day one, he's been a used car salesman.
So, Keyshawn, it sounds like you weren't surprised by this, but what does it tell you about Gruden, about that organization, and to pick up where LZ left off, about the NFL?
You know, I was surprised that he would use such vulgar language and depict African-American features and the things that he said about disparaging women, things of that nature. I was surprised about those sort of things, talking about the LGBTQ community, that all those sort of things I was a little taken back by. But as far as him talking negative about people behind their back, I'm not surprised at all about that. I mean, that is one of the reasons I called him a fraud, is because I kind of know Jon. I played for him. You know, he kind of talks out of both sides of his mouth. He'll tell you what he thinks you want to hear one minute and then says something different another. And then in terms of the National Football League, it's an opportunity for them to get ahead of this sort of behavior, because Jon Gruden's not the only one. He may be the only one that we know of as of right now that got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. But far too long, we've been dealing with this sort of behavior from white privilege, people that have been empowered that feel like that they can't be touched. And this has been the case. If you go back to Jon Gruden's tenure as a head coach, we won the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. He made the playoffs 2 more times after that. He took a hiatus for about 10 years and then was offered a $100 million contract to go coach the Oakland Raiders at the time and then be the spearheaded leader to lead them to the Las Vegas Raiders. You cannot have a person in position of power doing such. And in the process, he fired Reggie McKenzie, an African-American general manager, was by way doing a fine job for the Oakland Raiders as a general manager who had built a playoff caliber team along with Jack Del Rio. But that just goes to show you we've come a long ways, but we haven't come as far as you think.
Keyshawn, if you don't mind, I just want to follow up. I mean, saying that you knew that this is how he was, you knew he was a fraud. You know, why didn't you confront him, stand up to him? You know, what kind of pressure was on you?
Absolutely.
Or take him down on the field. You know, actually call him out in front of the team and take him down.
He was called out by me many times. And I don't know if you remember in the years that I played in Tampa, I was removed from the team because I didn't stand for the, you know what, I don't want to say it on air, but the mess that was being handed to me. I was the first individual that realized, you know what, we're dealing with something special here and different. And I'm not one to stand by and bite my tongue. And so the best thing he could do is remove me from the team to make it seem as though I was a problem when that wasn't the case. He was the problem, but I was going to uncover that problem. So the best thing for him to do is try to get me out of the building before people really caught on to him.
And LZ, you know, we're talking about something around it because we can't even say what's in these emails. That's how vicious they are. But I want to ask you about something that always comes out in these kinds of stories, and alas, there are a lot of them. People say this is cancel culture. This is, you know, this is a guy. He's a private email. It was a long time ago. Some of it, really, this is kind of vigilantism or something like that. You've heard this argument, I'm sure. How do you answer that?
Well, first of all, it wasn't simply about private emails. Remember, the former team president of the Washington football team was included in some of these exchanges, and he was so comfortable that he wouldn't be caught. He actually used corporate email. He used his business email address to have some of these conversations. There was a picture, a topless photo of a member of the Washington football team's cheerleading team being exchanged via corporate email. This isn't about cancel culture or some silliness like that. This is about being held accountable for your actions. This is a man in leadership who's in charge of a football team sharing photos, topless photos of a female contracted employee. That's why I keep saying we need to pull back a little bit from thinking this is simply about sports and shut up and dribble and all of that. No, this is about a work environment and the culture set within a work environment. And while it is sexy to focus in on Jon Gruden, do you really believe, as Keyshawn alluded to, that he's the only one? Consider this. 2013, Riley Cooper, a white wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles at the time, is seen on video dropping the N-word in a violent fashion. And that man was given a contract extension later. Meanwhile, in 2013, there are also 8 head coaching jobs available, and not a single one of them went to an African-American head coach who was qualified to do so. And a number of those jobs went to white men who never coached before. That was in 2013. Fast forward to 2021, there are 7 head coaching positions. And I guess we could say one African-American being hired as progress, but considering there was a Rooney Rule put in place to help eradicate this issue of African-Americans and other minorities not being hired in these positions, it seems as if it's not about the rules that are put in place, but whether or not the people who are put in charge of enforcing those rules. So, yes, let's talk about Gruden today because it's fun, it's sexy, he's the name. But remember, he's not singular in this. He was enabled in this. And there has been a reason why Carl Nassib is the first openly gay player in the NFL to make it onto a regular season game. There's a reason why the Washington football team just hired its first African-American president in the history of its franchise. It's not by accident. And until we start having honest conversations about the culture of this particular corporation, we're going to continue to have these segments where someone gets busted with their hand in a cookie jar, issue an apology, maybe resign, and then try to pretend as if that was an only accidental incident and that everything else is fine and dandy, when we know that isn't true at all.
So, Keyshawn, is this going to impact the culture? I mean, this story is gone global. It's far and wide. The emails are absolutely atrocious. I mean, LZ points out we've seen this in the past, but what we've seen come out today, is it going to change NFL culture?
I think it's going to help. It's a long way from changing, because this is a thing that's been going on for a long time. I just wrote a book called The Forgotten First, and it talks about racism and bigotry in the National Football League in the 1930s. 12-year hiatus where blacks were not allowed to even play in the NFL until 1946, when there was a reintegration of 4 African-American men to finally get the opportunity to live a dream and play in the NFL. The NFL is certainly trying to do its best. This is one of the reasons that I think that they were so taken back by Jon Gruden's emails and some of the things that he said, because you can't go around in your end zones at every single major league game. You write "in racism" in the end zone to be seen on national television, millions of fans, but yet and still you allowing this sort of behavior in this culture to take place. You can't continue to try to empower women as referees and coaches and things of that nature and put them in a position of power, and you're still having people like Jon Gruden saying what he's saying in emails. You can't open up the National Football League as a sports arena to openly gay football players and still treat people like he was treating people in emails and think that it's okay. So you certainly are going to have some growth, but I don't think you're going to be nearly where you want to be in the end, because there's a growing process in this football arena, in this business. These teams are handed down from family member to family member, family member to family member. And until you start having people in the room, the minorities I'm speaking of, the people of color, things of that nature, that will push back on some of these issues, we certainly are going to continue to keep having them. And that's the reality of it. We like to hide behind things. And I mean, we as in society, cancer culture. Oh my God, this is why this cancer culture. Oh, he didn't really say that. It's not that big of a deal. He wasn't employed by the NFL. We like to do all of those things and act like that there's no context with what's going on. We want to really close our eyes and act like we really didn't see anything that happened and hope it just go away.
That's a great point. If I could just follow up briefly, Keyshawn, on get your perspective as a player. There's all kinds of guys in a locker room. I'm sure there's men of character and men who don't have as much character. And I wonder if, in your experience, you came across these issues. You came across the latter, guys who were on the wrong side, and how you dealt with that is, please.
I was going to say, you always deal in a locker room because you got, 70 guys if you count practice squad and everything that's in a locker room. So you're going to always have people that you may want to pull aside and try and educate them on certain situations. And when you think about it, if somebody sent you an email despairing people and talking negative and racist toward people and being bigots, you probably would tell them, you probably don't want to do that. Don't send me that email again. But when you have it going on for 7 years and nobody pushes back or nobody educates each other or police each other, so to speak, you're going to continue to have these situations. I can tell you right now, and I've been inside of locker rooms where other Black players may have felt a certain way about white players or white individuals or whatever the case may be. And I had to tell them, man, I don't roll like that. That ain't really, I understand you got a problem with him, but just because he's white doesn't make him a bad person. Maybe it's just his views. But I also have been on the other side where a white dude did something and you had to tell him, say, that's not cool, because if somebody else see you doing that, the conversation may be a little bit different now. So you just try to educate each other as much as you can inside of a locker room and hope that it catches.
Keyshawn, as I look at MLK Jr. and I Have a Dream above your head, I tell you what, you practice what you preach, and you practice what MLK Jr. preached all those years. Really loved listening to you. Thank you for the conversation. LZ, always great to have you as well.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.